Since you're sitting in on this workshop, I'm pretty sure you have at least one reluctant writer in the K through 6th grade range. Welcome to How to Nurture and Motivate Young Writers. I'm Kim Kautzer with Write Shop, and today we're going to look at lots of ways you can make writing more exciting. Why is this even a thing we need to talk about? It's because most likely your kids can talk your ear off, but getting them to write those ideas down is another thing altogether. The act of capturing that fleeting thought and pinning it to the paper is a challenge. We think it sounds easy to just write what's in your head, but the reality is many children simply aren't mature enough to put all the pieces together. First, the thought has to develop in your child's mind. Then it has to travel all the way down his arm and to the pencil. But by the time he starts wondering how to spell this word or how to punctuate that sentence, that once wonderful idea has either been reduced to 3 dull words or it's disappeared altogether. Children 12 and under often need more help with writing than we think they should. We expect them to be able to think of an idea all on their own and then write about it. But here's the reality. Many kids just struggle to come up with writing topics. They forget what they want to say. They get overwhelmed by perfectionism. They complain that their hand hurts. They're afraid of making mistakes. Too many students approach their junior high year strongly biased against writing, either because they were never taught how to write and they now fear it, or because of negative experiences with writing as younger children. But by starting them while they're young, your children can actually look forward to writing and learn to approach it with joy. This happens when you create a safe, warm, nurturing atmosphere and do writing activities that not only teach, but that are infused with fun. So we're going to look at lots of different things today. First, let's start out by talking about creating a fun place to write. To encourage creativity and good habits for your budding writer, why not set up a homeschool writing center? I know you're thinking, I don't have the room, you haven't seen my house, you haven't seen how many kids I have. It's okay, I'm going to give you some tips. This should be a comfortable and low-cost space where your elementary age kiddos can work on their writing. You can homeschool at the kitchen table. You can have a homeschool classroom with a special writing area. Either way, make it as inviting and inspiring as possible. So a portable writing center is perfect where space is limited. So if you live in a small house, you don't have a designated school area, it's okay. You can store writing supplies in a backpack or a canvas tote. Some people like to use a cleaning supply caddy or a plastic tub with a lid, or even a rolling cart with drawers that can tuck into a corner at the end of the day. If you are fortunate enough to have a designated school area, it does lend itself to a more permanent storage solution, such as, an over-the-door pocket shoe organizer, which, I mean, these things are great because they have pockets for boots that are wide enough to hold paper and file folders, and narrower pockets for shoes that hold pencils and colored pencils and all the writing supplies you could want. But you could also use a bookshelf, storage cupboards, tubs, bins, baskets, whatever is going to make your writing center seem the most exciting and inviting to your kids. So next, you want to gather your writing supplies and store them in or near your chosen writing center. So these can include reference tools, pencils, assorted lined and colored paper, some craft supplies. But before you rush out to buy something new, just look to see what you already have lying around the house, moms. It's good to keep these materials separate so they're always handy at writing time. So whatever you gather should be set aside for writing time only, and not something you have to scramble for at the last minute, like who took the scissors or where's my my red colored pencil or whatever. Your writing center doesn't need to be Pinterest perfect. It doesn't. Just provide fun supplies that make your kids a bit more motivated to write and publish. So now you've got a workspace, but before the real writing happens, before you give your child a piece of blank paper and a pencil and a writing topic, play some learning games that teach writing skills, but without extra writing. If you have those struggling writers, you want to save their writing energy for the actual assignment. So these games don't include any extra writing. And when teaching writing to elementary age children, all these hands-on games and pre-writing activities are going to enhance the learning and help prevent frustration and boredom, especially the frustration part, not having to do extra writing, the boredom because it's like, whoa, we're playing games. And this can be hard for some parents, this playing games thing, and I get it. It's tempting to think of these activities as busy work, but let's look at why they're important in light of the way most children, including yours, learn. Busy work really means tedious workbooks meant to keep your kids occupied and out of your hair for a bit, but this is different. Instead of looking at writing games and crafts as busy work, maybe it's time to make a mental shift. Try to think of them as vital learning aids that get kids excited about writing and help their brains remember new concepts and benefit your kinesthetic learners who thrive on hands-on activities. My son was a kinesthetic learner. He loved stuff like this, and that was how he learned best. You want your child to associate writing with fun, and you want to stimulate your child's brain in as many ways as possible through these hands-on and sensory experiences. It's great if your child thinks he's playing instead of learning. Don't think that's a bad thing. Well, it's school time, we need to be all serious. Well, you do need to be serious about the learning, but it doesn't have to be dull, boring, and dry. That's why we consider these activities an important part of the whole writing process, because they put the fun in writing. Pre-writing games without any extra writing can teach skills such as, choosing a topic to write about. I hear that from you guys. My kids don't know what to write about. I hear they don't know how to add detail to a story. A pre-writing game can do that. They're always using the dullest, shortest words. They can learn through a pre-writing game how to replace weak words with strong words. They can learn how to build sentences, how to learn the elements of a story, a sci-fi story, a mystery story, a humorous story. They can learn to use synonyms, how to choose character, setting, plot, so much more. These writing games can burst open your school time and your writing time. So you play these pre-writing games on a separate day when you're introducing the writing assignment. Then when it's time to start preparing your kids for their own writing, let's say you have an assignment, but you've been doing some things to lead up to it, there's still another step before you give them their paper and tell them to write. And that is to help them plan and organize their writing. If your child gives you grief when it's time to plan out a story or report, that's when brainstorming with your reluctant or struggling writers comes in handy, because they want to completely bypass planning. They see it as extra step, extra work, more tiring. They just want to start writing. But without a plan, children have no sense of direction, and the story can quickly lose focus and disintegrate into a jumble or go way off track, or worse, the blank paper intimidates them so much that they can't even write a word. So unless you teach your kids from a young age that writing is a process and their story is just the end product of that process, they're going to be on their way to a lifetime of writing paralysis, and you do not want that. Instead, help them view brainstorming as a time of preparation. It's part of the writing process. It is a pre-writing activity that prepares them to write their story. At the elementary level, brainstorming helps your child focus on the topic, come up with ideas to write about, and roll those ideas around in their head and speak them out. Play with their thoughts without fear of criticism. They're brainstorming. This is not perfection. This is practice. Brainstorming is a key ingredient of the creative writing process because it unlocks your kids' ideas. This makes fundamental to preparing your child to write. With young students, you're going to get the best results when the brainstorming process is a shared experience that you guide. Make it fun, make it low-key, make it a time to chat about ideas for writing, and to take the pressure off, let your kids do the talking while you jot down their thoughts. It's kind of a way for them to do a brain dump. They don't have to be constricted by the fear of having to think of ideas and get them written down. You just are jotting down the thoughts as they talk. I encourage you also to use graphic organizers when you brainstorm. Graphic organizers are basically worksheets, sometimes just fairly straightforward, and sometimes with a creative twist. And they help their kids sort through ideas to plan their stories or their report details. These can be in the form of grids or charts. They can be story webs, idea clouds, but they can also take on more fanciful shapes. They could be hamburgers, they could be robots, but best of all, they boost your kids' confidence, because once your children have brainstormed, they've set themselves up for greater success. So we've done pre-writing, we've done brainstorming, also pre-writing, but a different kind. And now we are helping our kids to write their story or report. The big tip here is to help your kids with the physical writing. Many moms tell me, oh, my kids hate to write. But what they're usually meaning is that the kids hate handwriting. It's often due to immaturity, poor small motor coordination, or learning challenges like ADHD or dysgraphia, dyslexia. No matter what's at the root, no matter what their age, I suggest separating physical handwriting instruction from the creative story planning process. They're actually two very different things. Let your kids dictate their ideas to you while you do the writing. So they can speak their stories, they can talk about details for their report, you do the writing, they do the speaking. So in kindergarten and first grade, you can start working on forming letters and words through penmanship practice, right? I mean, that's part of that young age, kindergarten and so forth. But it doesn't mean that because they're not writing yet that they can't work on creative writing. They can, but just separate it. Do that at a different time, not connecting the two, so that you can work on what they would consider stories. And this is almost always oral at this age. Remember, they're just barely dipping their toes into the water. It's going to take time and coaxing and conversation to dig the imaginative thoughts out of your children's brains. So for these younger children, it's too much to expect sentences or even words to appear on paper. So work on handwriting skills like forming letters. But for creative writing, you could do things differently, like let them draw a picture. And then, and you've seen that paper where it's blank on the top and has lines on the bottom, so they can draw a picture. They can tell you a simple sentence or a story about it, and you write down the words on the lines underneath. It's okay to be your kid's scribe as they gain tools and skills and self-assurance. And believe it or not, you can and should even try scribing for your older kids too. It will boost their confidence, and they don't have to think of ideas while they're struggling over every word. It isn't cheating to do some or all of the writing, and it really, truly can flip things around for the better at writing time. The fifth thing so we've got our pre-writing, our brainstorming, our rough draft, which we just talked about, and now you're editing. This is something we want our kids to look forward to. We don't want them to dread editing. As far as most kids are concerned, editing and fun can never appear in the same sentence, right? In their minds, the very word editing conjures up images of mom poring over their paper with a magnifying glass and a red pen and just one purpose, and that is to find fault. This can be pretty disheartening, especially when you have a sensitive Seth or sensitive Susie. They honestly and truly believe that their paper is perfect just the way it is. Even when your child braves it and decides to take a stab at self-editing, you still may not make any changes. It's because kids like what they wrote. They don't see anything that needs to be fixed. They feel attached to their writing. They don't want to make corrections. There's an emotional connection to their writing. It's hard for them to make changes. So what can you do to make editing productive, but also fun? So here are a few things you can try. One is to use special editing tools just for this purpose. So you might have your writing center, you might have your writing supplies that have a little pouch or a little pencil box or something that has colorful pencils, highlighters, sticky notes, and other fun writing tools that are going to always be available for your child to make the writing task, the editing task more appealing. So, editing tools. The second thing is edit together. So I'm sure you guys will relate to this. When I was little, chores were always more fun when one of my parents did them with me. It didn't matter if we were pulling weeds or washing up after dinner. The job always seemed way more doable if I did it with my mom or my dad. Your child may feel that way about editing his latest story. So sit down together and try to make a game of it. With K through second graders, we're not talking about a major overhaul here. It's like, did we remember to put a capital letter at the beginning of each sentence? Does each sentence end with a period? Does our story have a beginning, a middle, and an end? Is there anything you want to change? Anything you'd like to add? And boom, you're done. It's just done orally. You don't have checklists. You're not red penciling everything. You just want to give kids a chance to recognize that sometimes you can change a word. You can fix a period at the end of a sentence, and that doesn't hurt. And they can do that. So it begins to prepare them for more involved editing as they get older, age by age and year by year. So with your older elementary, you can talk about the story or report, and you can discuss ideas for improvement. Then you can have your child make changes on the blank spaces between the lines, which is why I really like to suggest skipping lines when you're having your kids write. Better yet, you can pull out some brightly colored sticky notes from your child's editing supplies and let him write corrections on the sticky notes. This fun trick can reduce stress if your child doesn't want to mess up his paper with marks. So just get little ones, they could be like those little skinny ones. If it's just a word you're going to change, it can be bigger ones. You can have an assortment, but it's kind of a genius idea if you have children who stress over having their papers written on. What you're doing through this guided editing time is training your kids to become more independent self-editors. As you work alongside them, be patient through the process. Because with any other skill we teach our kids, it takes time. And then the third thing is to identify a job well done. Now, this seems like a simple and maybe obvious concept, but if we're honest with ourselves, we can admit that too often we focus on the errors, right? Instead, start by inviting your child to choose a highlighter marker from his editing tools. And as you're watching, encourage your child to look over the paper and find a difficult word that he spelled correctly and highlight it. And then ask him to highlight a sentence that he capitalized and punctuated correctly. And always praise your kids for doing a great job. Start out by looking for things they did well rather than looking for things that need to be fixed. That's going to go a long way in motivating and nurturing your young writer. The very last step of the writing process is publishing. This can be called final draft, but we like to, with elementary age kids, encourage crafty publishing. Of course, you can have your child write a neat draft on loose leaf paper, but writing for an audience adds purpose and meaning to your child's writing assignment. Having an audience takes your child past the point of writing for a requirement, and it definitely takes him beyond writing just for his normal everyday audience of one, which is, of course, you. So when your kids polish a story or a poem so that it's the best it can be, and when they go beyond what we would consider the traditional final draft on lined paper, and instead create an interesting published project, they're going to be more likely to write for the joy of it, especially if they love crafts. So there are so many ideas out there. I mean, you can scour the internet and find all kinds of ways that you can do creative publishing. These are just a handful of ideas for showcasing final drafts. They're not the be all that ends all, but it maybe prime the pump for you to give you some ideas. One is to make shape books. Now these are perfect for your younger ones. You just cut shapes that match the story's theme. So a house, a car, a seashell, an animal shape, whatever their story, their poem is about, whatever. Use cardstock or cardboard for the top and bottom cover, but also cut the lined paper in the same shape so that it makes this book, and then you can either staple the edges or you can lace them with yarn. So that's one idea. A board game is fun for older kids. You can suggest that they create a board game about their story and then play the game with the family. So the game can be connected to the story in the sense that, let's say, when there's a problem in the story, the player has to go back 3 spaces. When there's something great that happens in the story, they can move ahead. You can create game cards to go with the board. You can make it a card game. There are just lots of ways to do this, but you can get creative with it, but that's one really fun way to publish. If you're teaching your kids how to write a letter or how to write an invitation, you can have them make an actual card or letter, a decorated one, to mail to somebody, the real recipient of their letter. Just head for your writing center, grab some scrapbooking paper, punches, stickers, other supplies, and then your child can make a fancy card. Now, if your child writes a humorous story, they can write it, they can illustrate it. You can have a comedy night. You can host this comedy night with your family. I mean, right now, we're obviously not having friends and a lot of groups over, but you can just do a small little family night. You can start by having your child share her humorous story and then maybe watch a funny cartoon on TV, or give a funny movie, or read a stack of silly books. Invite everyone in the family to tell their favorite jokes. How fun is that? I mean, I love my little grandkids are always, they make up jokes that are the dumbest jokes, but they think they're hilarious, and that's fine, all the way up to the knock-knock jokes and the dad jokes, but everybody can participate, and it's just really a great time. And then for a travel story or a vacation experience, your kids can publish a suitcase story. So you can make a suitcase out of, say, a piece of 12 by 18 construction paper, brown construction paper, red, whatever color they want their suitcase to be. Then fold the paper in half, round the corners with scissors, cut a pair of handles from yellow or tan paper and tape them in place. And then you staple your child's story inside this suitcase. So when they open it up, there's the story. Well, depending which way you're looking at me, I can't tell, we're backwards, but the story will be on one side, and then on the cover will be the title. And the last idea I'm going to give you for publishing is for a factual report. One thing that's really fun is to try a trivia game. So on the cover of a manila folder, which I love manila folders for publishing because you can make flat books and lap books and all kinds of things, but for this one, you have the child write 5 questions on the outside cover about the topic. So if the topic is penguins, it could be, questions about where penguins live, what they eat, whether they fly, 5 questions that they wrote about in their report. Then you staple the report inside. Then you let family members try to guess the answers. Then they can open the folder and read the report to see if they were right. So do you see how much fun it can be when you add this kind of stuff to your writing? It doesn't just have to be all dry and boring, which is what so many kids associate with writing. And the very last thing I want to talk about that can make writing more engaging, fun, exciting for you and your kids is to use a fun writing curriculum. If you're inclined to pull together a handful of activities to create a meaningful writing lesson for your kids, you're going to find tons of inspiration through Google or Pinterest. But maybe you're not super excited about creating your own writing lessons. In that case, you'll want a writing curriculum that makes the experience fun for your elementary kids. Write Shop Primary and Write Shop Junior are just 2 examples of writing curriculum that are overflowing with ideas like the ones I've shared today. So many of the things that I've shared about came straight out of those books. If you are not fond of whipping up your own lesson plans and activities, you will really enjoy these materials. Our elementary levels include hands-on pre-writing games, graphic organizers, scripts to help you teach new concepts, fun editing suggestions, and a publishing idea for every writing assignment. So the younger level, Write Shop Primary, is for grades K through 3, and the older level, Write Shop Junior, is for grades 3 through 6. But a lot of 7th graders who could use one more year of fun factor before middle school will love Write Shop Junior Book F. You can find our products at writeshop.com. And that's it. This has been fun, hasn't it? I hope you feel more encouraged and equipped to add some engaging activities to your writing time. Thanks for joining us.